Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another pair of rounds in the UK sim racing community's Porsche Cup Season 5, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today, as we mark rounds 3 and 4 of our packed calendar schedule, we are here in Brazil, particularly in Sao Paulo, Brazil, at the Interlagos circuit for what is expected to be a thriller of a pair of rounds. Now, this circuit, of course, more commonly associated with being towards the end of a calendar in order to denote championship drama, and indeed the season finale is coming to a close. Instead, we see the Interlagos circuit playing a key factor at the start of our championship calendar, and indeed could it set a precedent for what lies in wait as we progress over the 18-round calendar schedule. We'll find out all that and more as our drivers get ready to go racing in the background, and indeed as they're going through their final practice session tonight. Let's take you through a little bit of admin and housekeeping and the story so far. Firstly, you're tuning in live via the official UKSimRacing YouTube channel. If you're not subscribed, then why not subscribe today in order to stay up to date with all the latest broadcasts and all the other videos that we do put out. And as our drivers get ready to go racing, of course, in the commentary booth you have myself, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain as Spit, depending on what media you follow me on, and I'll be bringing you all of your racing action for the entirety of this series. Now, of course, last time out we were in the United Kingdom, and our sole visit to the United Kingdom with the season opening rounds being at the Autumn Park circuit. And as we look to the calendar that has progressed so far, we can see that with our first two rounds back on the 5th of January, sparks flew, body parts flew with regards to the cars as well, where some drivers got it dramatically wrong, but for the most part it was clean, it was straight, it was narrow, and it was absolutely at the pinnacle of battling. And with only rounds 1 and 2 having proceeded, you have to ask yourself the question, how can we go even higher from there? We're going to try and go even higher today with the intensity and the battling all the way through and through as we take on the Interlagos circuit, what of it being Thursday the 12th of January. In a week's time we'll then make our way back to Europe, particularly for France, for the recently introduced to iRacing at Magny-Cours circuit. And indeed, if you've never raced or seen a race at the Magny-Cours circuit, you're in for a treat there. It's a very technical circuit and very different from our circuit in rounds 3 and 4 today, and indeed our preceding circuit in the opening 2 rounds. And then after rounds 5 and 6 we'll be making our way from France to Germany for the Hockenheim Ring, the classic Grand Prix circuit, the Tilke design circuit for rounds 7 and 8, and there it's going to be all about the battling into the heavy braking zones and who's bold enough to go too wide into the arenas. And then we'll make our way to conclude the first 10 rounds with rounds 9 and 10 in Norway at the Rudskogen Motor Centre circuit. And then on the 2nd of February we'll be taking a trip through the Norwegian countryside and local forestry, but it's going to be a circuit where track position will be key and qualifying is going to be the ultimate determining factor in terms of who may come away with the biggest points haul, given the fact the circuit's so difficult to overtake at. And then for rounds 11 and 12 and 13 and 14 we make 2 visits to the United States of America back to back. The 9th of February we head to Belle Isle in Detroit, the street races circuit like no other. Indeed, Monaco, you can hold your hat in the fact that Detroit's Belle Isle circuit is an absolute thriller in the Porsche Cup cars. I can tell you right now, they will absolutely fly around the Belle Isle circuit. And then we'll make our way to the more open Road America for rounds 13 and 14. We're there with a bit more space to play with. Our drivers can be a little bit bold on the brakes potentially, but still Road America, a circuit that does not take prisoners. Then for the penultimate pair of rounds, we're making our way back to continental Europe for the Spanish circuit, a circuit to Barcelona, Catalonia for rounds 15 and 16 on the 23rd of February, before bringing it all to a close back in the United States of America at the Sebring circuit for rounds 17 and 18. And indeed on the circuit that's been recently resurfaced according to iRacing, it is going to be a great way in order to wrap up what is going to be a fantastic season schedule. There's no question about it. And indeed, with the pace being set at Alton Park last time out, well, how will the championship standings set after the first 2 rounds, I hear you ask? Well, let's take a look at them, starting with the Gold Drivers' Championship. We can see here as we look to the gold standings, then Marcel Fritsch leads the way for WS Racing Esports after what was a very close call right at the end with a bit of contact with rivals Emiel Koopmans and Joe Newman. The WS Racing Esports driver was permitted to hold on to his win in round number 2, and to be fair, it was considered to be a racing incident what happened between himself and Joe Newman, and also a little bit of contact between himself and Emiel Koopmans. And with 33 points to Newman's 22, the WS Racing Esports driver now has a reasonable advantage, which he'll look to compound today. However, with Joe Newman in P2 and only 1 point ahead of Lee Holmes from 88 Tech Racing Team Purple, Emiel Koopmans a further point behind, and then you also have to keep into account Nathan Foster, Simon Bamber and Tim Darracott. And Tim Darracott, the driver who had the worst run of luck at the Alton Park circuit, with a pole lap which was completely turned upside down with the fact that in the races it just did not go his way. And in a way the same for Lee Holmes to an extent in the feature race. You can imagine here that really our top 7 right now are all within pace of one another, and it could completely invert the tables come the end of tonight, depending on who has the luck on their side and who's able to make it count when it matters most. In pair 8, meanwhile, Ryan Walker of Satellite Racing on 7 points. Let's not count him out from trying to creep into the top 5 today, given his run of fortune and indeed his consistency in United Kingdom last time out, with Cameron Willesey on his debut in the gold class picking up 6 points to move into P9, and then Steve Hughes completes the top 10, with Dan Blackwell, Samuel K. Sproul, Corey Lazarus and Andy Jones completing our gold standings. But then we come on to the Silvers Driver Championship, and we can see here in the silver standings, Jack Ward is the name at the very top with an absolutely dominant run of form at Alton Park, 38 points, picking up both wins back-to-back, and he absolutely looked infallible throughout. Indeed, there was nobody who seemed to be able to take a candle to his pace. However, looking to light the fire today and prove us wrong in regards to that at the Interlagos circuit will be Craig Shield, Roxanne Marshall and Glenn Humberstone, with Shane Piggott not too far behind as well. However, the quartet have one challenge ahead of them, and that is, can they avoid fighting one another and make sure to focus on bringing it back into the space of what is that battle for P2, Jack Ward from the lead, and make it a 5-way fight for the lead early on? Or will Ward be given the space today to continue to run away and gain an ultimate advantage? Well, with Shield, Marshall, Humberstone and Piggott so close on pace, you would imagine that perhaps they'll be fighting one another more intensely again, but if Ward does drop it at all, you can imagine he'll fall right back into their clutches. Then Ross McFowle in P6 down 11 points, only ahead of James Kersop based on result countback, with McFowle and Kersop both having difficult moments in the racing last time out, but showing promise, and Alistair Hatcher, Ashley Coverdale and Matt Maddox completing at the top 10, with the BDM Racing driver Daz Fellows in P11 best of the rest, header Darren Earls, and then Ash England, who was not able to take part last time out, 13, but in attendance today. We can promise you that for Willesey Racing. Now, as we come on to the Teams Championship standings, to wrap up our standings analysis here, we can see Simam Racing lead the way on 38 points, 5 points clear of WS Racing Esports. The two teams very close on pace at Alton Park across their drivers, and they'll both be looking to try and gain an upper hand on the other today. However, you could imagine 88 Tech Racing Team Purple and Apex Missers there, only 3 points apart in P3, P4 respectively, and 10 points off of the top 2. They'll be looking to get a little bit closer and indeed get themselves into the mix. It's then Willesey Racing who completes the top 5 in what is 8 points, with equal points, but ahead on based on result count back to affect Esports in P6, and then Satellite Racing, Simam Racing Academy, 88 Tech Racing Team Cyan and Blackout Motorsport New Zealand complete the top 10. With BDM Racing in P11 not having a happy day at Alton Park in terms of all point scores were concerned, and they'll be looking for a stronger day today, as will 88 Tech Racing Team Red and 24 Hour Punty People, and DCW Racing have yet to get a single point on the team standings after 2 rounds of 18. But as we come onto our circuit for today, then it is none other than, as it's formerly known, the Autódromo José Carlos Pace, named after, of course, the infamous Brazilian Formula 1 driver. This circuit is more commonly known, or colloquially known, we should say, as Interlagos, because it lies within the township of Sao Paulo, Brazil, and the name of Interlagos comes from the fact that it's based between two lagoons, if you will, the circuit, and, well, with that in mind, this is a circuit that, whilst it is located in one of the most densely populated regions of the world, it is not a street circuit. It is an open racing circuit for road racing, where our drivers will be taking on 15 corners, so you can see from the circuit map provided to us by simracingwiki.com. Thank you to them as always. And this circuit on a two-dimensional diagram does not capture itself completely, given the fact that it consists of so many corners, but also some major elevation changes. The highest point of the circuit running from turn number 15 in the run to 1, and as our drivers make their way down the start-finish straight, they'll descend into the Senna S, named after, of course, the legendary Brazilian driver of Ayrton Senna, and as our drivers make their way down through the left-right-left sequence through the Senna S into the Curva do Sol, they'll continue to try and balance the weight transfer of the car as they power out to turn number 3 and go full throttle down the Retro-Aposta straight in towards turn number 4. As they make the way into turn 4, it's going to be a slight downhill braking zone, but they'll fly out on an off-camber corner and make their way through turn number 5 before charging up the hill towards turn 6 and 7, the double right-hander, and then coming heavy onto the brakes of the hairpin at turn number 8. Emerging from turn number 8, it's then about balancing the power and car controls. They make their way through Pinheiro corner at turn number 9, and then they make their way into turn number 10, the slice corner on the circuit, the second hairpin in sequence. When they get onto the anchors, there's plenty of opportunities to dive down the inside. Survive that corner without incident, they'll make their way through Magulo at turn number 11, which is all about throttle control, trying to balance the car as close as possible to full throttle. And as they make their way through the left-hander, they'll come down to Juncal corner at turn number 12, a tricky corner given the fact that it sets up the run all the way to the start-finish line, because they make their way out of turn number 12. It's the uphill run in low to high gear as they come through turn 13, 14 and 15, and then go to do it all again in the flat-out charge down towards turn number 1. And of course, that start-finish straight run is where we're going to be seeing our highest possible speeds, but also going to see some quite high speeds in the run down the Retro-Aposta. As we come on to our rules for today, let's give you a quick reminder of the rules. They haven't changed since rounds 1 and 2. In qualifying, a lone qualifying format shall be used, where all of our drivers will have an isolated instance of the circuit, which they can use at their disposal in order to set their best possible lap time over the course of 8 minutes of unlimited laps. Race-wise, races shall commence via standing start, as is the tradition of the Porsche Cup, with the sprint race grid being set based on results of qualifying, and the feature race grid being a partial reverse grid based on results of the sprint race, with the top 8 positions inverted. So whoever takes the win in the sprint race, they'll be starting P8 on the grid for the feature. Conversely, whoever finishes P8 in the sprint race starts on pole, and then whoever finishes 9th and downwards, that's what they'll be starting on the grid for the feature race. There are no mandatory pit stop requirements in the sprint or the feature. One fast repair is available in each race, and a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 14 or more instant points. But that's enough rules, regulations, and everything in between. I know what you're all here for. You're here for the racing. And as we look back to circuit side now, let's take you through our schedule for tonight. Times in Greenwich Mean Time, that's GMT, or Universal Coordinated Time at UTC. They are as follows. In just under 5 minutes time, we'll be heading into our lone qualifying session. That'll be 8 minutes of qualifying, of course, extended to 10 by the time we get our drivers back into the pit lane. And after they've completed qualifying, we go straight to the grid for our first race of the day. That'll be the round number 3 sprint race, 12 minutes in length, and that'll kick off at 8:10 this evening. After that, we'll have a brief breather of 2 minutes approximately before returning at what will be there, and I believe that is a slight typo with regards to when the feature race is going to occur, and we do get that remedy there immediately for you. What will be 8:30, not 9:30. We're not giving them an hour and a half. We're going to be giving them what is only a couple of minutes in order to get themselves set for the feature race, and that'll be 30 minutes in length, 2.5 times the time duration of the sprint race. And the round number 4 feature race is going to be a definite determinant with regards to our driver's stamina and endurance in terms of who can keep it together after lap after lap. What has been the ultimate stamina test of a circuit? Well, as our drivers get ready to go, we do have one new driver in attendance today, in terms of a driver who had not signed up for the season opener, but he has signed up as of rounds 3 and 4, and it's the other component of Apex Missers here, the Dutchman of Danny Hugendorn, as he makes his way up towards turn number 6, and he'll be joining Emiel Koopmans as part of the Apex Missers outfit. And right now you can see here the Dutchman absolutely flying in this final practice warm-up session with 4 minutes left on the clock there. He's currently only half a tenth off of provisional pole sitter in the practice session of Lee Holmes, and well, that delta of what is half a tenth is tiny. It is minuscule given the amount of time you can make or break at the Interlagos circuit, and therefore for Hugendorn this could be a debut to remember. But speaking of debuts, we also do have one driver who wasn't in attendance last time out, but is in attendance today, and I can tell you right now that he is really setting the airways flying, and that is Ash England for UKSimRacing. The number 34 drivers, we see him make his way up towards turn number 1 here. He's currently the fastest of our silvers, with Hugendorn in the gold class and Ash England in the silver class here. And right now, UKSimRacing's driver is definitely setting the time boards on fire, given the fact he is a whole almost 7 tenths faster than next silver driver P11 overall at Glenn Humberstone. And well, could this be a sign of something to come? And with that in mind, of course, will that start to send sound waves and shock waves down through the silver garages with regards to our silver championship leaders, or right up there, including the likes of Roxanne Marshall, who may be thinking at this point, how on earth is England that fast? Well, we'll have to wait and see if it plays out in qualifying like it is in practice. Of course, practice is just one side of the coin, and then as we continue to make our way through tonight, we'll really get to see how our drivers fare, because again, qualifying is just one lap which determines where you are on the grid. It's not going to determine where you finish, unless this circuit, of course, was not going to be privy to overtaking. But as you can see, based on the circuit images that we're seeing so far, this is definitely a circuit which is open to a good number of overtaking opportunities, including the run into turn number 10. As we see Marshall making her way out of 10 and in towards 11, albeit we could see some lockups on the brakes there, of course, with these Porsche Cup 992 cars not having any ABS or anti-lock braking system, so our drivers have to modulate the brakes themselves and provide their own theoretical ABS. And also, we do not have any traction control systems when our drivers get the power down, and there's a lot of corners around here where they're in low gear and looking to try and get as much power down. The more you go towards full throttle, the more wheel spin you have on those rear wheels, and could that upset the balance of the car and see it go off onto the grass or even further forward? But as our drivers make the way on through, they won't be thinking about that. They'll be thinking just about what they can deliver over the course of their qualifying session. And as we look to the chat there in the YouTube chat, we do say hello to BRM Sim Racing, who says good evening everyone and good luck to all that's racing. And well, good evening to you, Mr. BRM. It's great to have you here. And as we do look to Marcel Fritsch here, of course, our gold championship leader going into this pair of rounds, and the WS Racing esports driver, you'll remember in his post-round interview last time out, was really talking about the fact he's just getting his head down, getting a feel for the car, and well, the results that came perhaps a little bit unexpected, given the fact we did have a high rate of attrition at the front front of the field in the gold class in round number 2, but at the same time it's about being there to pick up when everybody else loses it, and that's exactly what Fritsch did over the course of the race and really picked up a good pair of scores. And right now he's one of the big names in the gold class, but of course it all could change today. But as he makes his way through turn at number 11, we do have a number of drivers starting to make the way into the pit lane, and we do look to Sproul here, Sproul I should say, the New Zealander, as he makes his way through at turn 6 and 7 and in towards turn number 8, and of course a difficult start to his championship campaign, and be looking to have a stronger one today. And well, currently based in Australia, as I'm to understand it. Would you believe it, right now on the simulator, local time for him, it is 5 o'clock in the morning. That is dedication right there, and well, it's fantastic to see that we've got people from all over the globe racing in this series. Whilst the majority of our drivers are based in the UK and a little bit further abroad in continental Europe, we do have some big names, including Sproul, coming all the way from across the globe, and well, we all are all the more grateful for them joining us. But as we see Sproul making the way out of Juncal corner at turn number 12, this does give us a brief opportunity whilst we're waiting to go into qualifying. Just to let you know, if you are a long-time follower of the UKSimRacing YouTube channel or part of the UKSimRacing community, and if you've ever wondered how you potentially could give back to or support UKSimRacing, did you know there's a quick way to do so via our affiliates? Now, UKSimRacing is affiliated with multiple sim racing and real-world motorsport companies, including Swilly Meta Sim Racing Coaching, Race Anywhere and Demon Tweaks. And as the checker flag comes out on this practice session, we go into qualifying. If you do head to our website, which is uksimracing.co.uk today, and you can see our website there on screen, albeit it's currently in the process of being updated. You can see just slightly off camera there in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, there is a button for discount stroke affiliate links, and if you click on that button, you'll be taken to this page where you'll see the logos of our different affiliates, and if you click on any of our affiliates images, you can make purchases through their websites, which result in discounts for you and a kickback to us. And in turn, as UKSimRacing is a non-profit organisation, all of our affiliate earnings shall be invested back into the community to fund future series, including the Porsche Cup, the GT3 League, and everything in between. And additionally, some of our affiliates provide discount codes which are available in the UKSimRacing Discord, so if you're not part of it, it's a mandatory requirement. If you do go racing in any of our series, then why not join today? For remember, a little purchase can go a long way in supporting UKSimRacing, and I can tell you one thing that can also go a long way is what is a good qualifying lap time, as we return to our live pictures now, and we see Sproul making the way out of the pits, and indeed we also look to Tim Darracott here as he heads on through into turn number 8 and coming through the right-hander and now down into the drop into turn number 9. It does look as though our circuit map there is a little bit out of sequence with regards to where our drivers are on circuit. I believe that is a timing glitch which we won't be able to quite get resolved at this current point in time, but if we can get it resolved, we will for you, of course. But it does look as though our drivers are slightly behind themselves on circuit as they make the way on around, but as they do, we see here Darracott making his way onto a new flying lap, and indeed with it we'll be riding on board very shortly with Darracott as he comes charging on through. We reload our overlay there and we do get what is our board updated, and as he comes on through the left-hander, let's take you around then for a flying lap of the Interlagos circuit as we jump on board. So heading down towards turn number 1 and heading into the braking zone here, hot on the anchors from the 50 board and coming all the way down the gearbox, gradually to second gear from top gear and rolling his way through the centre S up to third gear before the right-hander at turn number 2. Goes a little bit deep there, but to be fair, cold tyres at the moment, it's not going to be the optimum lap as he comes through the left-hander at turn 3 and now down the retroposter he goes. Accelerating all the way up the gearbox to 6th gear, top gear once again, and getting ready to go onto the brakes at turn number 4. Braking there at approximately what is 70 metres as he comes down to 3rd gear and now powering out of the corner and heading through the kink of fire. Flat out here, bringing the car nicely over to the left-hand side and keeping it stable to the left-hander as he now heads up into turn 6 and 7. Trail braking here, 50 metres from the first apex at turn number 6 and continues to drop down to 3rd gear between the two corners as he now hits the apex at turn 7 and onto the brakes here for turn number 8. Down to 2nd, you'll see gradually bringing the car in and then letting the car point itself towards the apex at turn number 9. Nice early apex, ride the curb and then make your way out on the power up into 3rd gear before heading into turn number 10. Lift off the throttle there to avoid hitting the rev limiter, then onto the brakes into 10 and coming down to 2nd, now powering out, bringing the car over to the right hand side quickly, not too much able to unsettle the weight transfer. Now through 11 and powering down towards Juncal corner at turn number 12. Use the runoff area there, opens the corner up, drop to 2nd gear and now power out as you hit the apex curve, and it's all about did you get on the throttle soon enough with enough velocity in order to carry all the speed through turns 13, which he goes through initially, then 14, which he's just cleared, and now into turn number 15 here, completely flat out as he crosses the pit entry there to cut the run to the start of the finish line. And what's it going to be in terms of an opening lap for Darracott as he crosses the line? Well, Marcel Fritsch a little bit fast there by 3/10, but Darracott still with a highly respectable 35.269. A nice lap to open up his proceedings as he makes his way on down through turns 2 and 3 and continues to charge on through. But as he makes his way around onto another flying lap here, we do look to some other drivers who are coming towards the end of their current flying laps, including what is there, I believe, Alistair Hatcher as he crosses the line, and also going to be for his first lap on the board of 36.764, and we're 2 seconds off of the provisional pole lap. And well, goodness me, it's poles apart here, and Ash England right now, silver driver. To be fair, we've only started to get our first times on the board, but still, that is monumentous in the fact that Ash England takes the initial provisional pole of a 34.7. But immediately, my goodness, we're going to sing his praise, and to be fair, we should still sing his praises, but Emiel Koopmans goes into the 33s on his first flying lap with a 33.848. The man is absolutely driven to succeed, and to be fair, you'll remember in his post-round interview, what was Alton Park, we talked about the bad luck he had in Season 4 and how he kept clear of the bad luck in the season opener, and he's looking to do so again in our second of 9 venues as he makes his way through turn number 5 right now. Hoogendoorn, however, his teammate goes 3/10 faster, and it looks as though this Interlagos circuit is continuing to evolve. Now, as we look to our weather there on the right-hand side of your screen, you'll notice that we do have a relatively moderate ambient temperature, 22 degrees centigrade, and that track temperature has dropped since the start of the practice session. It was 37 degrees centigrade when we started practice, but now it is 31 degrees centigrade, so a slightly cooler circuit. I think is bringing out the best in our drivers as we do look there to Lee Holmes, who goes even faster at the top of the timing tower standings with 33.412, and that's in the gold class, we should continue to point out. But meanwhile, Ash England re-promotes himself to P7 with 34.205. I definitely think that England right now could be the one who's on course or is on his manifest destiny for what is that silver class pole, given the gap of what is 3/10 between himself and next driver. In fact, more than 3/10, it's almost a whole second as we double check our maths over James Kursop, and that is phenomenal. And speaking of James Kursop, who we see here making the way up towards turns 6 and 7 at a similar point in circuit as our previously spectated driver, we can see that Kursop right now just keeping it smart and sweet into the next corner as he comes on down for turn number 8 and heading into 9. And to be fair, in these Porsche Cup cars, if you're not feeling bold on the throttle, then don't be bold with it. Just be smart, be sensible, because being smart and sensible around here is definitely going to find you a good amount of lap time. And it's the drivers who can then balance the risk versus reward who will get the ultimate lap time. And speaking of that, Hoogendoorn goes even faster. Now the provisional pole time sets a 33.245 overall. We've still got 4 drivers yet to set a lap, including Ward, Humberstone, Ills, and Schill. But as we see here, Kursop making their way out of the final corner, the final major corner that is, and now through the kinks. They'll very shortly be going on to their next flying lap, and well, as they do, we are going to be riding on board with them for what will be, in fact, I don't think we're going to quite squeeze the lap in at the end, so we may not be able to ride on board with them. In fact, we may have to stay to the exterior cameras. But Kursop crossing the line there, and does he improve as he comes down towards turn 1? He does improve, but he does not move up the standings. But meanwhile, it is trading season in terms of lap times right at the top, within inside the top 8, and that's occupied by gold drivers right now, from Hoogendoorn all the way down to Foster, and now P9 is occupied by the gold driver Simon Bamber, who moves there with 34.135. And what we can see here, Holmes right now only 1/10, if that, of Hoogendoorn's pole lap, and that lap of a 33.245 is going to stand the test of time, I think. But to give you an idea right now, purple sector-wise, as Holmes backs out there, he knows he's done, given the fact he will not get around by the time the 8-minute clock strikes and we take all of our drives back to the pits. But as we see Walker heading across the line here, what can Ryan Walker do as he heads down towards turn number 1? He improves to 34.880, puts in P12, P11 in the gold class, and he parks up there in the runoff area. 9, his qualifying session is complete. Kursop coming around, I don't think he's going to make it around. It's going to be very close. I think he's out by about 2 seconds in all relative speaking time. And with Hoogendoorn in the pits and Lee Holmes having parked up and decided to head back to the pits as well, have we got anybody else out there trying to put a time in? Well, no, we have not. And the fact that Ward, Ills, Schill and Humberstone have not put a lap on the board means they'll be starting from the very back of the field. But I think Kursop here's not going to have enough time to get on through. He'll just miss out, and it'll be Hoogendoorn who takes pole in the gold class, P1 overall, and it'll be Ash England who takes pole position in what is the silver class, P10 overall, as we get ready to form the grid for round number 3. So as we head into round 3 for our sprint race of today, how do they line up, I hear you ask? Well, it is Danny Hugendorn on his debut in the series who lines up on pole for Apex Missers in the end by 1/10 over 88 Tech Racing Team Purple's Lee Holmes P2. Behind them, Emiel Koopmans for Apex Missers and Marcel Fritsch, your championship leader for WS Racing Esports, with Tim Darracott from Effect Esports being joined by simracing's Joe Newman on the third row. Row 4 consists of Cameron Willesey from Willesey Racing and Nathan Foster from simracing, with Simon Bamber, the privateer P9, and then silver pole sitter Ash England from Willesey Racing P10. We then have Samuel K. Sprout from Blackout Motorsport New Zealand P11 with Ryan Walker from Satellite Racing alongside, and behind them on the grid on the 7th row it is Shane Piggott from 88 Tech Racing Team Red, joined by the privateer of James Kershaw. Dan Blackwell and Glenn Humberstone line up from Simam Racing Academy and 88 Tech Racing Team Purple together on row number 8, with Roxanne Marshall and Alistair Hatcher on row number 9, the 24-hour punty people pipping the 88 Tech Racing Team Cyan driver to the post, and then we have Matt Maddox from BDM Racing and the privateer of Ross McFowle completing the top 20. Ashley Carverdale from Simam Racing Academy and Craig Shield from 88 Tech Racing Team Cyan line up together on row number 11, and then it's Jack Ward and Darren Eels who complete row number 12. Willesey Racing's driver then not putting a lap time in, nor did Darren Eels, and I believe we have everybody bar one driver there covered, and in fact we do have all of our drivers listed in the end. I think we do have a little bit of a glitch with regards to our timings, so it is going to be 24 drivers in attendance on the grid, albeit we have got 25 drivers listed on our timing tower. We'll try and understand what exactly has gone wrong there very shortly, but with our 24 drivers we are almost all set to go now as we do clear the screen of the grid, and I believe we may have a driver who has fallen into the pit lane. That's one that has not been classified on the grid. In fact, we are missing a driver entirely, and we will try to get that resolved for you as soon as possible, but it seems though one of our drivers is missing some driver data. But in the meantime, as we get ready to go, it does look as though we're missing an individual, but whilst we may be missing somebody, it's time for the lights. And it's lights out and away we go for round number 3 here at the Interlagos circuits. Hugendorn looks to get a good start in the run down towards turn 1, but there's already contact and drama off the line as multiple drivers now come into the medley into turn number 1. My goodness, that has gone horrifically wrong before they even made 100 metres. And well, the beneficiary from all this is Lee Holmes, who holds on to the lead after an absolutely dramatic run to turn number 1, and that is at least 7 drivers caught up in the carnage, and we will take a look back at what exactly happened in a brief moment. But right now, focusing on those who have survived the contact at the start, we can see here a number of drivers have really picked up. Hugendorn goes wide at turn number 4, and that's to return on the exit at turn number 5 as all our drivers come charging on through and up the hill. But as they make their way into the right-hander at turn number 6, it does appear as though that everybody else now really picking up the pieces where so many have lost out early on, including what is here James Kershaw, who's jumped all the way out to P8 overall, P2 in the silver class. Ash England meanwhile still leading the class by 2 seconds, and well, looking a bit further back here, Joe Newman as well, the driver who's caught up. And I think there's major damage to the Simam Racing driver's car as he comes on through turns 6 and 7 and in towards 8, and Ryan Walker comes on through as well. But as he makes his way into the braking zone here, we look to what is Tim Darracott right now, chased by Cameron Willesey as they make their way into the braking zone for turn number 12 here for the first time of asking. And on coming up the hill right now, 1.1 seconds between Holmes and Darracott. It does look as though here Darracott's having to do a little bit more defending and focusing on the rear guard action rather than trying to go and pounce after our leader as they make their way towards the end of the first lap. So after one lap, it is Lee Holmes who leads ahead of Tim Darracott P2, followed by Cameron Willesey P3. Simon Bamber P4 ahead of Danny Hugendorn P5, and then Samuel Sproul completes the top 6 of the gold drivers. Silver pole sitter and continued silver leader is Ash England P7 ahead of James Kershaw. We've got a bit of drama there from Cameron Willesey going a bit deep into 1, brings it back together for 2, but he drops down to P5, losing the place to Bamber and Hugendorn. But as we continue dropping on through the field, James Kershaw here P8 gaining multiple places at the start, 6 places gained at the start, 1 in class as well, with Alistair Hatcher just behind, and then Ross McFowle completes the top 10 with Roxanne Marshall taking a peek there with best of the rest in P11 as they head onto the anchors once again for turn number 4. And I think there Roxanne Marshall sporting a tiny little bump on the front and left bumper of the car from the driver's perspective as the 24-hour punty people tries to go hunting in the run up towards turns 6 and 7. But can they find the way on through? Well, we ride on board here and try to find out as we bring the battle box up in the bottom right hand corner of your screen, and you can see Ross McFowle, they're going a little bit deep under braking, and Marshall thinks about it, but I think they decides to back out because there are multiple laps available and opts not to push the pressure too soon, as always they may lose the run versus Hatcher and company ahead. as they come out of turn 9 and up into 10. Marshall, I think, will be looking for it into turn 1 on the next lap if they do get a good run, but Val goes very deep, coming out of turn number 10. It's going to be a side-by-side run through. Maguglia 11, Marshall's on the outside. There's a little tap there, Marshall knocked to the AstroTurf and runs wide, but Val gives them the space to rejoin. But there, I think Marshall really trying to push it and find the grip on the outside, and in the end, the briefest of door rubs sent Marshall a bit further wide, but Marshall will be wary of that now and will now know not to try and take the outside at turn number 11, instead opt the inside line. But meanwhile, at the front of the field, here's the camera spins on around. It's Simon Bamber under pressure from Hugendorn, our pole sitter, who fell back to P4 on the opening lap. And as they make the way down through turns 1 and 2, through the centre S and now onto the Retro Aposta very shortly, you see how Bamber really almost being pushed along there through the left-hander as they make the way on down the straightaway, and as they come charging on towards turn number 4. Well, right now Bamber then not really trying to close the door versus Hugendorn, who gets his nose in. Bamber closed it slightly, but he still leaves enough space for the two of them to make it too wide on corner exit as they come through turn 5 and up the hill to 6. Bamber being really selective on where he's defending, but to be fair, that's not a critique, that's a praise for him, given the fact minimal defending, but nails it there in terms of just getting focused down on the power on the exit of turn number 4 and giving himself the traction and the run up towards turn number 6. So Bamber knows something we don't, in terms, I think he feels a bit more confident in the straight line speed acceleration of his car versus what Hugendorn behind as they make the way up towards turn number 10. But as they come into the right hander, we take a look back at what exactly happened at the very start of the race in that very dramatic opening run in towards turn number 1. Well, this was off the line, and we look at it from Shane Piggott's perspective here, and well, a clean start from Piggott, and a number of tries further down the order. I think the carnage will occur very shortly, and Piggott has to try and find his way on through. Instead, finds a SimRacing car right in his way. But looking a bit further up the order, what exactly happened as they made the way off the line? Well, Glenn Humberstone there caught in it to a degree, and I think when Emiel Koopmans came charging across there from one side to the other, so I wonder if it is Koopmans who might have set off the chain reaction or was involved in causing the chain reaction. We take another look back from Koopmans' perspective if we can. Well, on the right, brings it over to the left, and it's contact with Fritsch. And well, these two, of course, came together all to parking round number 2, and that's what set off everything else after it. So Koopmans and Fritsch there both with a dismal start to their day, and well, I think all the drivers who end up in the mix behind them might have a word to say about it as well. But still, they'll learn from it and they'll move forward into round number 4 as we return to the live pictures here, and as our drivers continue to go racing. We have had Ross McFowler drop down to P12. Roxanne Marshall's come through, and Nathan Foster as well. We'll come to that very shortly in terms of what exactly has happened to our silver driver, who's now dropped to P5 in the silver class and P12 overall. But for the time being, we focus on the 88 Tech Racing Team purple driver of Lee Holmes, who currently sits only 4/10 clear of Tim Darracott. And well, Darracott, after last week, the feeling down the paddock was that he just had a very difficult day at the office, and the Briton not happy with the way things played out in the United Kingdom. But here in Brazil, definitely all fired up once again as he makes his way out of turn number 12 and up through 13, and right now really trying to put the pressure onto Lee Holmes, and these two have been given a lot of road space to play with, given the fact that P3 Hugendorn is a whole 2 seconds almost off of the pair, as they make the way through turn number 15 and down towards 1 once again. Halfway through this sprint race, they've still got half it to go, at 5.5 minutes on the clock plus the final lap, and as they come down to turn number 1, it is Hugendorn who has just set the fastest lap of everybody, a 33.71. The Dutchman may have had a difficult start to his race, going wide at turn number 4, costing multiple places, but I can tell you right now he is pushing on here as he makes his way out of turn number 3, with Simon Bamber being dropped slightly. But to be fair, I don't think Simon Bamber's going to complain, given the fact he's running a very comfortable P4 at the moment, and that'll set himself up very nicely for round number 4, the feature as well. But meanwhile, as we look from them to Ross McFowle, what happened to the privateer on lap number 4? Well, as we look to the replay here, and we're trying to discern where he is, well, he's there making his way up into the braking zone. Contact with Marshall again, and well, McFowle there being made to go straight on, locking up the brakes, and a gentle caress to the tyre barrier there, but the two of them coming together, and well, I think both drivers had no love lost between them, as another Briton makes his way back up to speed, and we return to the live pictures, and just in time, as we just had a spin coming out of turn number 4, and that is Matt Maddox of BDM Racing, who's had a bit of a moment there coming on through what is the left-hander for down into 5, and well, a difficult race for many here, and it does seem as though many are falling victim to the drama of the Carlos Pace circuit. As meanwhile, we do look to Lee Holmes up front still, and as he continues to make his way in the lead this race by only 4 attempts, that pressure is building, albeit right now the Briton, I think, comfortable at this time, but has Darracott's got something up his sleeve or something in reserve that he is waiting to deploy as we get towards the end of this race? Well, that's the big question, and I suspect that right now Darracott really focusing on going onto the offensive in the last couple of laps. So he goes purple, and then Hoogendoorn goes 2 tenths faster compared to Darracott. I think Hoogendoorn could also get into this battle if right now Darracott and Holmes were to battle over the next couple of laps, with the fact that if we do a bit of quick mental mathematics, they've got 3 laps including this one to go. Well, if they battle hard over all 3 laps, then Hoogendoorn is going to be right there and making it a three-way fight for the lead of this race when they come to the checkered flag. Conversely, however, if they avoid fighting and Darracott keeps his appetite at bay to the final lap, then Hoogendoorn may not be close enough until the very end of the race, whereby it will be the drag race to the finish line, but by then Darracott may have got done what he needs to get done. Meanwhile, looking back here to our silver leader of Ash England, the UKSimRacing driver, having broken away from Kershaw by an advantage of almost 6 seconds now, chasing after Sproul in the hunt for overall position. But Sproul, of course, gold driver versus Ash England's silver driver status. And right now, the UKSimRacing driver doing everything he needs to do right, as Roxanne Marshall, meanwhile, the 24-hour Punty people, really trying to push on here to go for a podium in class P4 in the silvers right now. And that is Alistair Hatcher just in front, who is P3 in the class P9 overall, as they make the way out of turn number 9 and into 10. And we ride on board the gearbox here of Hatcher, who goes a bit deep. That's going to open the door up, and Marshall does not need more of an invitation to try and go around the outside. But this time, oh goodness me, and Marshall tries it twice, and this time is caught out in a more aggressive manner in terms of how the car went around as Hatcher there. I don't think meaning to make contact, makes contact with Marshall, and Marshall loses out all the ground gained over the course of the last couple of laps. But meanwhile, whilst that's happened, we look back up to the front of the field, particularly the battle for P5 overall, and it's Karen Willesee who right now is under pressure from Sproul as they make the way through 2 and 3 for what is the penultimate time in this race, as they come roaring on down and around on towards the Retro Aposta. And you can see that Sproul falling back, but it's the run on the straights that does seem to give the New Zealander the opportunity to catch up on the Briton in the corners. And there seems to be a bit of parity in the medium speed corners, but on the low speed corners, that seems to be where Willesee has got the stronger setup on the car as they make the way out of 5 and up towards 6. But as they continue into the trail braking zone here, I think Sproul right now really feeling as though he's got to go some, given the fact that Ash England is closing behind. I think England is not going to wait if he can take the scalp of the gold driver as they come into turn number 8. But as they make the way on through, we look from them to race leaders of Lee Holmes and Tim Darracott here. The two of them are battling still as they make the way on down through turn number 11 into 12, and well, Holmes doing everything right so far in terms of holding on. And of course, they've both kept the beast of the Netherlands at bay of Hoogendoorn by not fighting one another. Hoogendoorn still sits 1.4 seconds off of this battle, 1.7 seconds off of the leader. And as they make the way out to turns 14 and 15, we go on to the final lap here. The white flag will be waving as they come on around, and now it's crunch time. Can Lee Holmes hold off Tim Darracott, who immediately looks to go around the outside here? Darracott's been saving it up for the final lap. We've called it, and as they come on through into left-hander, down into the right, you can see that Holmes holding his adversary at bay, but for how long before Hoogendoorn gets into the mix? As we ride on board here with the Effect Esports driver as he charges down towards turn number 4. And the charge they go here with a little bit of tow as well, but Darracott too far back in order to be able to try and make a move on the inside. Instead, what he's got to do is try and hook up this apex and power it out. But you see there, Holmes going a little bit deep and losing some initial run off the corner. Meanwhile, Darracott taking plenty of apex curve. In fact, a little bit too greedy on that curve and had to settle the throttle down slightly. But as they make the way into turn 6, the gap still staying at 2.5 tenths as they come through 6 and 7. And Holmes, they're briefly jinking to the inside run to turn number 8, but decide not to need it in the end as they come on through. Wipers on there for Darracott, cleaning the screen. It would seem there's no droplets of rain as far as we're aware. And as they make the way out turn 9 and up towards 10, getting ready to go onto the brakes once again. And Holmes here, I think, will feel safe all the way through 10, and now he just needs one more corner to go his way, and that is turn number 12. If he gets a good long chopper there, it's going to be hard for Darracott to beat him in the run to the start-finish line, but as they make the way through Juncal corner, then who is going to be the one who leads it to the line here? Well, it looks as though Darracott is close he needs to be to try and out-drag the 88 Tech car. 2 attempts, they exit the corner, and now it's all about Darracott trying to find a way alongside and around. He'll have to go to the right, or will he go behind? We'll have to wait to see. Holmes leads, but it's going to be a drag race to the line. Who's it going to be as they cross the line? And it's Lee Holmes who takes the win ahead of Tim Darracott P2, Danny Hugendorn on his debut P3, Simon Bamber P4, Cameron Willisey in P5, and then it will be Samuel Sproul P6 with Ash England taking the silver class win there in P7 overall for Willisey Racing ahead of James Kersop, who brings home a brilliant P2, the privateer in class P8 overall, Nathan Foster P9, and then it is Alistair Hatcher who brings on home P10 there, albeit it's a slowdown, I think, giving the place back to Roxanne Marshall. So Marshall in the end does finish on the silver podium for 24-hour punty people. Alistair Hatcher for ATEC Tech Racing is the best of the rest in P11 overall, ahead of Ross McFowle, and then Dan Blackwell P13, Matt Maddox in P14 as they come on down with Ashley Coverdale P15, and then very shortly it will be Joe Newman ahead of Ryan Walker and Shane Piggott to complete our drivers who finished on the lead lap. And we have also had finish a lap down. He just crossed the line on that brief camera shot moments ago was Glenn Humberstone, and I believe Jack Ward has also just crossed the line, so I look out my commentary booth window, but the last of our finishers on the lead lap will be Shane Piggott from ATEC Tech Racing Team Red. But so many big names being caught up in the drama in the run to turn number 1, and we'll take a look at those race results very shortly, but definitely a race that was very different from what we predicted, but still has led to some fantastic battling in the field, as our drivers are now given a 2-minute break, and that gives us time to analyse the results of race number 1. So as we do bring the results up on screen for you, ladies and gentlemen, we bring them up in terms of the overall results. And of course, remember the top 8 grid inversion for round number 4 of race number 2 here today in the feature. Lee Holmes in the sprint took the win in the end then by 200 over Tim Darracott at the line, with Danny Hugendorn there finishing P3, 2 seconds off the leaders, but still looking to try and come back at them in race number 2 here today. Simon Bamber off the podium, but still a very good P4 there for the privateer, ahead of Cameron Willisey in P5, and then Samuel Sproul completes the gold run in the top 6. The Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver just finished ahead of our silver winner, P7 overall, Ash England for Willisey Racing, and then James Kersop P2 in class, P8 overall for the Silvers, and Nathan Foster P9 there, head of 3rd place in the Silver class, P10 overall to complete your overall top 10 of Roxanne Marshall for 24-hour punty people. Alistair Hatch there, best of the rest for ATEC Tech Racing Team at Cyan P11, head of Ross McFowle in a difficult race which could have been a podium, but a mistake in the end cost him dear. Dan Blackwell P13, Matt Maddox P14, Ashley Coverdale P15, and then Joe Newman, Ryan Walker, Shane Piggott, and as we continue on down we can see Marcel Fritsch and Glenn Humberstone completing the overall top 20, with Jack Ward and Emiel Koopmans there finishing further on down, retiring before the end. Well, in fact, not Jack Ward, but Emiel Koopmans retiring from the end. Jack Ward, the last of our finishers on circuit, with Emiel Koopmans that early retirement alongside Craig Schill and Darren Eels there. 3 retirees, 3 drivers finishing multiple laps down, and then what was a total of 18 drivers finishing on the lead lap. But that's the results of race number 1, ladies and gentlemen, and as we look back up to the top there, we now get ready for the run in race number 2. It's coming up very shortly, and who is going to be your winner in race number 2? That will be the big question, and can this man, Tim Darracott, potentially find a way to gain the upper hand this time around? Let's wait and find out as our drivers head to the grid. So as they make their way to the grid for the feature, this is how they line up. On pole position, it will be James Kersop there. The silver driver takes reverse grid pole, and the privateer qualifies alongside Ash England on that front row, the Willisey Racing driver there, who took the win, of course, in the sprint. Can he make it 2 out of 2? Should he pip Kersop to the post? Samuel Sprout and Cameron Willisey, the gold pair, they start P3, P4 on row number 2, with Simon Bamber and Danny Hugendorn on your 3rd row, Tim Darracott and Lee Holmes at P7, P8 on row number 4, and then the top 10 completed by Nathan Foster and Roxanne Marshall, P9, P10. Alistair Hatcher and Ross McFowle, P11, P12 on what is your 6th row, and followed up by on the 7th row, Dan Blackwell and Matt Maddox. And it's Ashley Coverdale and Joe Newman on the 8th row, with Ryan Walker and Shane Piggott on the 9th row, and then your top 20 completed by Marcel Fritsch and Glenn Humberstone. And then outside the top 20, Jack Ward and Emiel Koopmans looking to have a better race this time around, and the same could be said for our final 2 drives on the grid on row number 12, Craig Shield and Darren Eales. But that's the grid set, ladies and gentlemen. It is time for us to go racing once again. 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out and away we go with a very fast starting line sequence. And as James Kopp looks to try and hold on to the position, he drops a long way down the order as he falls backwards into the pack. And meanwhile, Ash England on the inside of Sprout. England takes the lead of this race as there's no drama into turn 1 this time in terms of the carnage. But instead, everyone makes it on through by the looks of things, albeit some drives have been barracked and pushed down the order quite significantly. And well, we talked about Kersop losing out considerably, and also the same for Roxanne Marshalls. We've got a driver off there, taking the board with them almost, the DRS board, and I believe that was one of the SimRacing Academy machines. They come down into turn number 4, but as they make the way through, Nathan Foster here, one of the biggest gainers at the start with 2 places gained overall and in class as he chases after Tim Darracott and Hugendorn. But meanwhile, Lee Holmes here in a side-by-side with Simon Bamber up his inside into turn 6 and 7, and as they make the way through the right-hander and now into the braking zone, well, I think there Bamber's going to feel he's ahead, but there's a tap on the rear from Hugendorn as they make the way through 8 and into 9, and these two are still side by side. Holmes is not backing out, Bamber's not backing out. One of them's got to in, and it's Simon Bamber who goes a little bit deep and understeers. He tries to get the power on, the car snaps back at him, and so he snaps it back into a straight line as they make the way through 10 and up towards 11. But meanwhile, Tim Darracott here losing out a little bit at the start, with Hugendorn jumping ahead as they make the way down towards turn number 12. But onto the brakes they go, and as the Apex Misters driver here hits his Apex, they'll head on through onto the next lap very shortly. Meanwhile, further back we look to Karen Willisey here, who, with a very damaged car. In fact, I think Willisey has had a major knock at some point on this open lap. We're trying to understand what exactly has happened as we hear that Darren Eales is in the pit lane. They've not been able to get the car back out onto circuit with damage, but as they make the way to the timeline here, we do look a bit further up the field, and as they go on to lap number 2, Hugendorn still battling with Bamber as they come on through, but we've got a driver up there, and I believe that is Ash England, who's had a bit of a difficulty in the run into turn number 1. And Ryan Walker as well has been involved in a major instance. We've got multiple drivers having difficult moments of the day here in our second race. And as they come charging on down near the Retro Foster, where you can see Simon Bamber being pressured by Nathan Foster behind, and Alistair Hatcher trying to pick his way past Joe Newman. And Newman, the gold driver, of course, having to defend as he wants to go hunting after the gold drivers of Foster and Bamber ahead of him. And he doesn't want the silver driver upsetting his rhythm as they make the way up the hill and into turn 6 and 7. But through the right-hander they go, and as they come roaring on through, and this time down to turn number 8. When we look a little bit further back here to Craig Shield versus Jack Ward. Shield going around the outside for 88 Tech Racing Team Cyan. But the problem with this is, of course, on the outside of turn 6 and 7, the driver on the inside can get the run. Shield goes on, and this car's off. There are cars off at turn number 8, and what on earth has happened there? 2 drivers going around, and Craig Shield lets go of the brakes and lets it run wide to avoid making it a three-way collision. And meanwhile, as we look from in the midfield where there's all the drama happening, we've got drama building at the front of the field with Sproul right now leading, but Lee Holmes right on his rear wing as they make the way on through. And Lee Holmes, of course, trying to go and make it 2 out of 2 today, having picked up the win in round number 3, the sprint race here at Interlagos. And now he's trying to do it again as they make the way to the timeline for lap number 3 to commence. And as they head on across here, it's going to be Holmes on the outside, Sproul on the inside. Sproul's going to defend as much as possible, but Holmes, it gets the overrun in terms of breaking into the centre S's. And Holmes, they have a classic move around the outside, gets it hooked up, done and dusted. And well, now that is poetry in motion. But to be fair, Sproul will be wary of the fact there's a long way to go in this race, and he won't want to over-temper the tyres too much at the moment as they make the way into turn number 4 once again. And indeed, with Holmes pushing so hard, has he put them at risk? When we say them, the tyres overheating slightly. Well, Hugendorn right now is pushing on here, and Sproul being passed around the outside by the Dutchman, who will take the inside run up into turn number 6, and through the right they go into 7 as well. Darracott now the next driver to line up, the New Zealander, albeit I think Sproul at this point just focusing on keeping it smart, keeping it sweet and keeping it simple, and not making any errors at all as they come on down down into turn number 9. But further back, we've got Bamber here to defend versus Foster, and only moments ago you'll remember that Bamber on the opening lap had to defend on the outside of 9, but this time he defends on the inside, and it makes Nathan Foster feel as though he's been hung out to dry, given there's just no grip on that outside line. You have to be tight to the apex at turn number 9, but in return now he does have as his rear gunner Joe Newman, fellow SimRacing driver, as they make the way into turn number 12, and I think these two will now try to work together in order to find a way past Bamber as they make the way onto the next lap. As they come on through, we do look to Darracott battling with Sprout as Darracott up the inside through turn 14, and as they make the way on towards the turn 1 line once again. Well, now Darracott has the run, but has he got the overspeed? Sprout's coming back, and Sprout cuts back to the inside. It's going to be a battle on the brakes, but in the end Darracott outbraking his rivals. They make the way on down the hill, gets it done, and meanwhile into the pit is Cameron Willisey. Now we're not sure what this is for. Unfortunately, we do not get any instant data in terms of whether it's a drive-through penalty or anything along those lines, but Cameron Willisey coming on in, and I suspect that may be for repair work on the car, because we did see a major indent on the front of the Willisey Racing Porsche, and what I think that has really taken its toll as he uses up his fast repair there. Meanwhile, a little bit further up the road and continue to crusade his way up through the field as much as he can, Ross McFowle here, P16 overall, P7 in the silver class, has Ashley Coverdale for company just behind as Coverdale takes a look into turn number 4. Can't find a way on through meanwhile, but these guys are battling for position and battling for some critical points as well, and as they make the way through turn number 5 and up towards 6, we will very shortly get a few replays of what exactly happened on the opening laps in terms of the instance. But meanwhile, we look back to Bamber versus Foster, and this time Foster goes round the outside again at turn number 9, but he gets it hooked up now. He's got temperature, and look at that move to the inside for Newman, who just dives it on the inside there. Well, I think Bamber recognised him, and that one driver had gotten through, but I think he felt safe as though that Foster was not going to be followed through by Newman. But in the end, Newman just simply sees the gap and says, well, if Foster can do it, so can I. And they change place, and Simon Bamber loses 2 places at the price of 2 corners as they make the way up towards turn number 1. And we get confirmation there from Lewis Willisey in the YouTube chat with regards to Cameron Willisey's car having significant damage on it and using the fast repair. Thank you for that, Lewis. We do appreciate it. And as our drivers make the way on to another lap, well, right now things are not settling down at all, because if it's not in the gold class, next battling to be on the podium steps in at the silver class here. As we can see, Alistair Hatcher, James Kirstop and Roxanne Marshall going toe-to-toe. Hatcher P2 in the silver class at the front of the trio. Marshall behind the pair in front, who are on the podium theoretically, of Kirstop and Hatcher, and Marshall running P4 in class, P11 overall, as they make the way down the retro post here and looking for an opportunity to jump up into P3. Takes a little peek there to the inside, can't find it at the moment, has to tuck back on in, but right now Hatcher doing everything right as we ride on board the gearbox, the ATXF Racing Team Cyan driver, as they make the way out of 5 and up towards 6, and Marshall looking to try and get the run into 6. Able to go around the outside here, as Hatcher meanwhile does not have to worry as much now with the 2 silver drivers battling hard behind, and the gap opens up immediately from what was 4 tenths going on to lap all the way up to double that at this point as they make the way out of turn 8 into 9. But as they come down, this seems to be where Hatcher struggles a little bit by comparison in these lower speed corners, just not able to keep the clearances. Meanwhile, Emiel Koopmans is trying to come up through the field as quickly as possible, and Hatcher goes deep, and Kirstop takes a peek there in the run to 10. I think Hatcher is just having to be very sensitive on the brakes. By comparison, it looks like Kirstop is in a whole different world of retardation in terms of getting that car to slow down, versus Hatcher, who just seems to not have the ability to be as comfortable on the brakes there. But then again, is Hatcher trying to play it smart with regards to just simply using the car gently, trying to protect the car as much as possible as they make the way through turn 14 up towards 15, as they come on through the final technical corner and make the way down towards turn number 1. Not even 10 minutes clear yet in this race, and right now it is for Alistair Hatcher to try and hold off, but he does seem to have a bit of an issue with regards to the corners under heavy braking, as meanwhile Emiel Koopmans has to go round the outside at turn 2 in the centre S is there versus Kirstop, and now Kirstop is going to be very exposed to Marshall as they make the way on down the retro poster, and Marshall on the inside. Koopmans' defence to the very inside. It's 3 wide with the gold driver parking it there. Kirstop goes around, and Marshall backs out with the seats parting around her, and as they make the way through turn 4 into 5, Kirstop goes deep, Marshall on the inside, and now Marcel Fritsch tries to get into the mix as well. Of course, Fritsch trying to come through the order, much like Koopmans, with the 2 of them causing, it would seem, that instant on race number 1 today. And right now they're both trying to find redemption on circuit as they make the way into turn number 8 and down towards 9. But Marshall there just not able to capitalise, and I think frustrated perhaps a little bit at the gold drivers right now intervening in what should be an opportunity not just to take P3 in class but also go hunting after Alistair Hatcher, who's been bought all the time in the world. But in the end Marshall steers clear that under, braking into turn number 10 and lets Fritsch through as they make the way down through turn number 11 and into 12 once more. As they come roaring on down, we do get an opportunity to take a brief breather and take a look at what happened in the opening laps to a number of drivers, including Ryan Walker on lap number 2. Well, this was in the run, and already we can see that Cameron Willesee had the damage early on, but look for Ryan Walker here under braking. Well, locked up the brakes and went straight on, and for Ryan Walker in the end, having to turn the car around, but that was a near miss as he found his way to Fred through the order. We also did have an incident for Matt Maddox on lap number 2, and this was at turn 6 into 7 by the looks of things. Now, was it a spin for Maddox under braking into 8? We lost the rear of the car, and that explains what happened, as then there was the tap with regards to the car at Glenn Humberstone, and the two of them coming into contact, and that's where we caught the incident earlier on, where we saw our 88 Tech Race Team Cyan car go straight off, and that was the car, I do believe, of Craig Shields. So that's where it all went wrong for them as we return to the live pictures now. So those are the two big incidents of the day. We're not sure exactly where Cameron Willesee got the chunk of damage on the front of his car, albeit it has been repaired now. But as we return to the live pictures here, the racing continues, and there's been no change of position recently, although I say that, and then we look to Ashley Coverdale here, and in fact James Kersop has dropped down the order very rapidly. What on earth happened to James Kersop? Well, we are waiting for a replay of that. In the meantime, Kersop trying to battle now with Ashley Coverdale, and Kersop only moments ago, of course, battling to be on the silver podium, and now a far cry away from it in P17 overall, P18 class. And in fact, we do have the replay coming up very shortly, exactly what happened to our silver driver, and here we go. Was in the run down towards turn number 4, goes into left-hander, and in the end goes a little bit deep. In fact, that's not the incident for James Kersop as he came on through. I think he had to come into the pit lane for track limits, as we're hearing, as he made his way on up there, but just to fend off Marshall. And in the end, we have had confirmation it was a visit to the pit lane for Kersop for track limits. He's reached the instant count and therefore had picked up a drive-through penalty that set him a long way down the order, but still got plenty of battling to go. And speaking of battling here, as we look to those live pictures now, almost 12 minutes into the race, he takes a peek to the inside versus Ashley Coverdale, but Coverdale covers him off very well there as they make the way into the centre S once again, and Kersop just one corner at a time will be looking to try and fight his way back up into the silver top 5. But as they make the way on through here, it does seem as though those instant points are really starting to catch drivers out as they make the way on through, and meanwhile drivers who are running on the edge with regards to trying to make sure they don't get it wrong at any point. It is our race leaders, all about Lee Holmes and company, but we won't focus on them now as Kersop gets the better run through 4 into 5, and as they make the way out of 5 and in towards 6, Coverdale has to go defensive here on the inside of the double right complex. That's going to cost a lot of speed in the average apex speeds between the two as they make the way in towards turn number 8. You can see behind Cameron Willesee there, and also what is Ryan Walker, the two gold drivers who've had difficult races respectively, now trying to pick their way past the silver pair. I think Kersop here may have to play the concept of discretion as the better part of valour, in the fact that he may want to be discreet about just letting the gold drivers go, but he won't when there's a mistake, and there's contact there from Coverdale into Kersop, and well, which way would you call that? That's the big question, and well, I don't envy our stewards right now. But meanwhile, speaking of things going other ways, it's Danny Hugendorn who comes on through to battle with Lee Holmes and Tim Darracott and takes the lead of the race overall in the gold class, but only for a brief moment as Lee Holmes gets the run down the inside into turn number 4. Onto the brakes they go, and well, Holmes gets it hooked up there under braking, and Darracott sees the door is open with Hugendorn having to give the space, but now as they make the way up to speed, can Darracott find a way on through, or will he be made to wait his turn as they make the way into the double right of 6-7? And I think here for Darracott, he's got to focus on letting Hugendorn really try to get in the mix with Holmes and see if the two fall to the side, and that would give Darracott an opportunity to make a 2-for-1 pass. But there, Hugendorn getting a nice move through 6-7 into 8 and retakes the lead. Meanwhile, Lee Holmes a bit off centre there, coming down into turn number 9, and as a result, as they make the way into 10, now Darracott has an opportunity to put pressure on the 88 Tech Racing driver, now on paper, based on the theory of qualifying and lap time that we saw in the sprint race, you would argue that Hoogendoorn should be the fastest man on circuit, and now he is leading. He should be able to break away, and I think for Lee Holmes, he is aware of that, and he will try to get back as close as possible in the run to turn number 1, and may have to force the issue into the opening corner, because if Hoogendoorn's able to pull out a gap of a second, I don't think we're going to be seeing him until the very end of the race in terms of if that tyre wear starts to pick up. And you can see Hoogendoorn is aware of what Holmes is trying to do. Holmes needs the toe here to get back in that fight to turn number 1, because if he can't, then that gap is going to come open very quickly as they make the way into the centre S once again. Meanwhile, further back here, we can see Sproul, Bamber and Foster going to toe as they make the way into turn number 1. And right now, Nathan Foster gets ahead of Sproul, but Sproul has to defend versus Bamber as they make the way into turn number 3. And as they come through the cover to Sol and onto the rest of Foster, it's very close between the two. And as they make the way on through that, I think there was a little bit of a latency contact between the two drives, but they survived it, and Bamber makes it ahead for now. But Sproul very close, and Ash England, your silver class leader, P8 overall, is right behind this, I think, thinking about whether he can try and make a move as they come on down and around and up towards turn number 6, 7 they go. But through the right hander they charge, and as they make the way through the double right complex here, you can see just how close it is together for the group, as we are hearing that James Kirstoff has had to come into the pit lane again, and I believe that may be for repair work on the car. But as our drivers come charging on through, it's been a difficult one for Kirstoff. Further back, of course, we have that contact between him and Ashley Coverdale, and as we continue to focus on here inside the top 10, what our drivers rolling on down the round, and I believe that Kirstoff has in fact had to be towed to the pits due to damage on the car from what we're hearing from race control. But meanwhile, as our drivers make the way on through and up towards turn number 12, we look a little bit further back here to Ross McFowle, who continues to try and close down Alistair Hatcher as they make the way out of 9 and into 10. Can't find it at the moment, but meanwhile we cut away for only a brief moment and it's all kicked off already. Ash England here coming on past Nathan Foster. In fact, Nathan Foster, from what we gather, making a mistake on the exit at 12, and he's going to lose not 1, not 2, but 3 places. Sproul tries to go around the outside, but in the end it is only 2, with that there's a lock up there for Foster as they come out of 1 into 2. Defends the inside, and Sproul's going to go around the outside, and that is confidence on the Blackout Motorsport New Zealand driver as he picks up the place, goes back into P7 overall, P6 in the gold class as they make the way down towards turn number 4. Meanwhile, Ash England here putting pressure on Simon Bamber, and right now the silver driver is really trying to push on and up the tempo as much as humanly possible as they come down towards what is turn number 6. But as they make the way into the braking zone here, it does look as though for now England may just have to temper the steel and grit and determination, instead just focus on running in behind, because he will not want to fall back towards Sproul and Foster and end up in a fight with 3 of the gold drivers when he just wants to pick up the 1 place. But as they make the way in towards 9, we do look from them to Lee Holmes here, who continues to stay within 4 attempts of Hoogendoorn. But meanwhile, Darracott behind is also right there in the mix. They make the way into Juncal Corner, and as we ride on board the gearbox here of your race leader, notice how good it's been. Holmes gets an error and he goes round at the exit turn 12 into 13, and that's a disaster for Lee Holmes. He tries to rejoin, and the car, what with the gradient of the grass and the drop off of the asphalt surface, it means it is so difficult to get the car back onto the track without going round once again. It becomes so hypersensitive in these Porsche Cup cars when you rejoin on the run up the hill of turn 13. And the ATEC Racing Team Purple driver has had it all go so horribly wrong. But how exactly did it go wrong, I hear you ask? Well, we'll ride on board for a replay view very shortly and find out. We've got it queued up. But meanwhile, you can see Lee Holmes losing out versus fellow ATEC Racing driver Piggott as they make the way into turn 1. Shane Piggott moves into P11. And right now, Roxanne Marshall and Shane Piggott battling for P2 in the silver class. That's P10 overall. But we take a look back at what exactly happened to Lee Holmes. Making his way into turn number 12 here, and as he came on through, gets on the power, goes deep, and there goes the car, and in here you can see trying to adjust it on the steering, and the car just simply says no, we're going to go. And in the end, as he spins it around to avoid being on the road, the car starts sliding down the hill, and he has to very carefully bring it back up the road. back onto the road, we should say, and just very gingerly with that throttle pedal, but it went so very wrong for Lee Holmes, as now we return to the live pictures. He's already back past what is there Shane Piggott, or on the verge of back past him, and then Piggott gets back ahead as they make the way through 8 into 9, and Marshall right now, I think, will be hoping that Holmes can get in between his teammate and herself to hold him up a little bit longer. But meanwhile, we look here to the two leaders now released, with Holmes dropping down the order, and it's Darracott who leads in the run out of turn 12 on towards the start-finish line, as they have 11 minutes to go, plus the final lap of the race. Still plenty of time to play this out, and as they make the way into the braking zone for turn number 1, you can see there Hoogendorn up the inside. Darracott goes to the cutback here, but not going for any theatrics right now. Instead, just simply sizing his opponent up, and right now I wouldn't be surprised if we see these exchanges multiple times over the next 3 or 4 laps, for the simple reason I think each driver is focusing on running together. But I say that Hoogendorn, they're covering off Darracott on the inside, and will decide, no, I want to be the leader. So right now the Dutchman is really trying to hold track position, and Darracott, I think, wants to try and get that back so that way he can play the upper hand. Is there something that we don't know about? Has Hoogendorn spotted something in terms of the way Darracott's car seems to light up around here, and whether, if he gets past, Darracott could break away? I think that is the big question as they make the way in towards turn number 8. But as they make the way through the hairpin, we look a little bit further back to Simon Bamber, who has started to close up to the final step of the gold podium and overall podium. That in front of is Joe Newman, and right now the priority for UKSimRacing inches closer and closer with every yard turned. But the change will be for Ash England 5 tenths behind. But I think for England, he's just focusing on one thing right now, which is taking overall top 5, because that's a huge achievement in of itself, but making 2 wins out of 2 on his entry into the series. Of course, registered since rounds 1 and 2, but not able to attend in the season opening rounds. But I believe there are drop scores in effect to mitigate that, and right now England trying to pull off a perfect start to his season as they make the way through turn number 12 here. 10 minutes still on the clock, and that will equate to approximately what will be 7 more laps of racing action as they make the way on through to another lap very shortly. But as they come roaring on through, of course, with Lee Holmes having that major instant earlier on, we now do look back to Roxanne Marshall, who has just been passed by Lee Holmes, who you see there in the background of the camera, albeit now the foreground as the camera turns on around. And Marshall, 24-hour Punty people driver P2 in the silver class right now, trying to hold off Shane Piggott. You can just see behind there, 6 tenths back for where's 88 Tech Racing Team Red as they make the way into turn number 1 once again. And will these two exchanging lap times as if it's going out of fashion with regards to one lap, one's faster than the other. The next lap they go back the other way, and the gap between on that lap was 3 tenths in favour of Roxanne Marshall, 35.73 versus 36.01 for this man, the Briton from 88 Tech Racing. But as they make the way down towards turn number 4 here, we could see it switch back at any moment, and seeing switchbacks here, we're looking at a switchback potentially from Ross McPhail on Alistair Hatcher. And as they come on through, McPhail gets the position. He's been chasing after this top 5 position, P5 in the silver class for some time, and he's finally found it off of Alistair Hatcher, a P16 overall. How did he get it done, however? Let's show you the full story. Was they made the way into turn number 1 here. McPhail on the inside, but Hatcher held it around the outside initially, but now as they come down into 2 there with a closing apex, Hatcher takes plenty of apex curve but has to let the car settle before he can get back on the throttle, and McPhail cruising around the outside, albeit that may be a little bit too complimentary, but definitely finding the speed and finding the sweet spot, whereas Hatcher in the end having to back the car off to a degree. But as we return to the live pictures, I believe, well, it looks like McPhail's actually been off circuit, and there's a lot of damage on the side of the car. Goodness me, I'm not exactly sure what's happened there. But meanwhile, speaking of I'm not sure what's happened, we've got Tim Darracott into lead. He's just opened up a 2-second gap out of nowhere over Hoogendorn. And well, what on earth has happened to lead to that? It's all kicking off now, as meanwhile we can see here in the battle for P6 overall, P5 in the gold class, Nathan Foster is ahead of Sprout and Koopmans. And as they make the way down towards turn number 4, Foster right now having to defend, and Koopmans, meanwhile, literally salivating at the prospect here. He's recovered all the way from the starting position at the back of the field. He has gained 14 places, and he wants 2 more to add to his tally as they make the way out of turn number 4 and 5 and up towards 6, 7. But as they come through the right-hander into 6, 7 right now, you can see how Foster, not with as much pressure here, I think can try and do a little bit of a breakaway, as meanwhile Sproul, by comparison, Will Koopmans will definitely be looking for that move as soon as possible. Or will he just wait for the run to 1 next time around? Well, if you're Koopmans here, I don't think you've got the time to do so, given the fact that time is running out and there are still plenty of places to be going, because keep in mind that Bamba is only 3 seconds up the road in P4 overall, P4 in gold class as well, and given the pace that Koopmans has been showing, he has been approximately 7 tenths to 9 tenths of a second lap faster than the guys in front of him so far. If he can nail this and get the moves done soon, there is no reason why on the final lap he could not be contesting P4. But as they make the way out of the turn number 12 and on towards the start-finish straight here, in the long run they charge, and Sproul right now with that pressure, we ride on board here with Koopmans as he continues to run in the toe of the New Zealander, and as they make the way up towards turn number 1 here, you can see Koopmans just not enough speed on the straight by comparison as they head into the braking zone. I think Koopmans has really geared the car around that manoeuvrability in the corners, perhaps a little bit more downforce in the car compared to his peers, but coming through the centre S's, they're really having a difficult run, and perhaps the tyres as well starting to hit their limit, given the fact he's had to push the tyres and the car hard as a whole in order to be able to get up inside the top 10, and perhaps now he's starting to feel the consequences of that as we get towards the final 10 minutes. Of course, the feature race, as we said time and time again in the Porsche Cup, is designed to prove to be a stamina test of car and driver in terms of you need to manage those tyres if you want that pace to run all the way from the very start of the race through to its conclusion. And right now I think Koopmans has had to really push the car to its upper threshold in order to be able to make his way up here, and now it's going to be coming about putting that pressure on and trying to get his peers in front to make a mistake as they come through turn number 9. As you can see, Sproul and Foster not making mistakes, but I think Sproul they're taking a little bit of a look to try and get into Foster's head and look to gain that place inside the top 5 of the gold class. They make the way out to 10 and in towards 11, but as they exit the hairpin and now down through the drop hill left-hander, you can see how all 3 drivers there, all with slight variations on the race tonight. It's interesting to see how much speed they're trying to carry respectively, but in return now as they come out of turn 12, again this is where I think we'll see Koopmans is close, but not close enough to really affect the pass. He's gaining, but it's only by slivers. To be fair, Sproul does have the toe of the driver in front, which will be aiding him, but even so here with Koopmans effectively getting a double draft, he's just not gaining enough, and I think that's a sign that Koopmans right now, he may have all the speed in the corners, but he just does not have the legs on the straights compared to his peers in front, and that is what is keeping him at bay right now as they make the way through turn number 3. But as they come charging on down the round, we do look up to race leader Tim Darracott here, who continues to hold the lead by a considerable margin, and the question is, how on earth did he open up a 2.5 second gap? Let's find out. Was they made their way out of turn number 12 through 13. It was a side-by-side battle between Darracott and Hugendorn, and as they came on through, it was still side-by-side, but Hugendorn had to back out in the end and tuck back in. Now, I think there's more to this than just what happened there. I think Hugendorn may look for the move here and lock up under braking into turn 1. And as they make the way, and Hugendorn looks at the move, he goes in very hot, does Hugendorn, and he goes straight on, and well, now that was a catch, and he just managed to stop it before it touched the grass, and no lock up on the brakes at all. The Dutchman there for apex misses may have missed his apex, but one thing I can tell you he did not do is mismanaging the brakes correctly, and that explains how the gap opened up. Meanwhile, as we return to the live pictures now and the racing continues, we do hear that Dan Blackwell is battling with Ross McFowle for P17 overall, albeit these two of course in different classes. It's a battle for overall position and pride between the two as they make the way through turn 6 and 7. Blackwell on the inside for SimRacing Academy gets the move done on McFowle there as they now head into the turn 8 hairpin, but as they come on through the right into the drop left-hander, we do now look to Simon Bamba up in P4 as we've got a car going slowly there, albeit it's a lap down. That is Maddox. It's Matt Maddox who is letting the leaders, who are the drivers who are on the lap ahead of him, and as we look to Simon Bamba here who's chasing after Joe Newman, Ash England still right there with them, and meanwhile we could see that Sproul is getting ahead of Nathan Foster as they come out the centre S's and through the Curva del Sol, and I think this is going to open up even more as they make the way down to the braking zone. That's Marcel Fritsch who's caught up to the back of this as well. Well, Fritsch is no stranger to getting right into the thick of it right at the end of races, and as they make their way through 4, 5 and up towards 6, Koopmans right now, here's the unenviable task of trying to hunt down Foster and at the same time keep Marcel Fritsch at bay, and I think for Sproul he could not have timed making this pass more effectively at the most critical moment, because now if Foster wants to hunt down Sproul, he's really got to push Sproul to the utter limit, because I think that with Koopmans and Fritsch behind, they are either going to battle one another or instead they are going to really start to try and pick holes in Foster's defence as they make the way through the right-hander at turn number 10 and up towards 11, but rolling the way out and down for 11 they go, and Sproul here just seems to be so comfortable. At this point in the race, there's just nothing phasing him as they make the way through Jinkau and up towards the start-finish line they go. Gap of 4 tenths as they exit the corner. Now, this is where we will see, of course, whether our theory on Sproul's car is correct, that he's running quite a bit less downforce compared to his peers. As they make the way through 14 into 15, the gap was 0.36 seconds when they left the corner. It now stands at 2 tenths. Meanwhile, we see Koopmans there on the inside as it's white flags out. That means we're on the final lap, and Sproul holds up, but there's contact there between Foster and Sproul, but Foster there goes and parks it with regards to a lock up of the brakes, and Samuel Sproul holds on to P6 for now, but that tap on the rear will not be helpful. Meanwhile, Roxanne Marshall is into the pits, literally going on to the final lap. I believe that may be for a penalty, because right now Marshall's not coming into a pit box. I think it is a drive-through penalty. In fact, they are in the pit box, so maybe it's a little splash and dash of fuel, and I've had it confirmed it is fuel going in, and for Marshall that's a disaster. That releases Jack Ward into P2, and Jack Ward, of course, has not had a day to remember today after a day to remember last time at Alton Park, but Sproul holding on to this P6 position right now. This is one of the closest battles on the circuit, and one of the other close battles is, of course, the battle to be on the gold podium. Newman versus Bamber with Ash England behind as they make the way on through, and you can see there Sproul now really being tapped on the rear and harassed by Fritsch as they make the way into turn number 10, and he goes as deep as possible on the inside line there to make sure Fritsch can't find a way on through, and Koopmans finds it instead, but he gets blocked off there in the run for 11. But we must look to the front of the field here because he comes on through to the finish line. A checker flag awaits him. He will take the win by 3.7 seconds. It's Tim Darracott who is your winner in the end when all is said and done, in an absolutely superb drive ahead of Danny Hugendorn P2, and then it will be Joe Newman who completes the overall podium and the gold podium ahead of Simon Bamber, followed by Ash England who is your back-to-back silver winner today, and then it will be Samuel Sproul who comes home P6 to complete the gold top 5 ahead of Marcel Fritsch, with Emiel Koopmans there P8. Lee Holmes comes on home P9, and it'll be Nathan Foster P10 ahead of Shane Pigott, who, would you believe it, I don't think he's going to believe it, he comes home P2 in the silver class when all is said and done. Best of rest P11 ahead of Cameron Willisey, and then it is Jack Ward who finishes on the final step of the silver podium P13 overall ahead of Ryan Walker and Roxanne Marshall. Marshall with that late pit stop for fuel, and then Alistair Hatcher P16 ahead of Dan Blackwell at the line. Ross McVow will come on home at P18 there, and then last of your finishers on the lead lap today, it will be Ashley Coverdale who comes on through very shortly to take P19, and we have had the driver Matt Maddox finish a lap down P20, and then we did have the 4 retirements of James Kersop, Craig Schill, Glenn Humberstone, and of course Darren Ills. As we see here, Ashley Coverdale crossing line for SimRacing Academy, completing our finishers on the lead lap, and well, what an absolute thriller. But this man today, it would seem, in the feature race was destined to succeed, as he comes into the pit lane right now. The Effect Esports driver of Tim Darracott nails it perfectly all the way to the line, and as he comes on in, I think the smile on his face will be much bigger than it was last week when it all seemed to go wrong at Alton Park. Today it has all gone right, and well, as he comes on in, championship leader of Marcel Fritsch, not having a race number 1 to remember, but in race number 2, in round number 4 of the feature here, it's definitely worked out for the Austrian. A good recovery drive to P7 overall, P6 in class. He'll be pleased with that. But as I try to make the way back into the pit lane, let's take a look through those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries, of course. So after 30 more minutes of racing here in round number 4 of the Porsche Cup Season 5 here today at the Interlagos circuit in Brazil, Tim Darracott taking the win in the end by 3.7 seconds over Danny Hugendorn. The Effect Esports driver battling with the Apex Missers driver for time in, time out, but was able to find that advantage in the end, and it was all about a mistake under braking for Hugendorn into turn number 1 that saw the gap open up. Brilliant battling between the two of them. And indeed, Hugendorn on his debut making himself one driver not to forget about, in the fact that he does seem to be right up there in terms of pace. Joe Newman, P3 there, the SimRacing driver, not in the spectacle of the battle for the win, but definitely holding firm to bring home the final step of the overall and the gold podium, with Simon Bamber, P4 there, the privateer, ahead of Ash England, the silver driver, coming on home P5 overall, a superb result in itself, but making it back-to-back wins on his first 2 rounds of the season for Willisey Racing. And then Samuel Sprout, P6 there, completing the gold top 5, ahead of Marcel Fritsch and Emiel Koopmans. Koopmans, with Lee Holmes and Nathan Foster completing the overall top 10. And then Shane Piggott, best of the rest, P11. But for him, I think he's going to take a lot of pride in bringing home P2 in the silver class for the 88 Tech Racing Team Red by keeping it smart and simple and not overcomplicating the race. Cameron Willesey, P12, ahead of Jack Ward, P13, claiming a podium there to make amends for what was a difficult race number 1 here today. Ryan Walker, P14, and Roxanne Marshall there, P15. The 24-hour punty people with just not enough fuel to get to the end of the race unscathed, and therefore having to come in on the very last lap. Unfortunate, but still plenty of potential and promise being shown. And then Alistair Hatcher, P16, ahead of Dan Blackwell and Ross McFowle. As we carry on down the order, Ashley Coverdale, P19, ahead of Matt Maddox, who finished a lap down, P20. And then our retirees of James Kersop, Craig Schill, Glenn Humberstone, and unfortunately Darren Eels not able to make it to the grid for 88 Tech Racing Team Red, it would seem, with a technical issue with the car. But fantastic racing between all of our drivers from start to finish, no question about it. And well, as we now do get ready, ladies and gentlemen, for our post-round interviews, don't be shy to let us know what's been your favourite moment of today in the racing in the YouTube chat, but we'll be back in approximately 10 minutes for those interviews. Don't go anywhere, you won't want to miss them. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it is time for our post-round interviews with our volunteer drivers. And today, we've only got one interviewee available, and that, of course, is the number 34 car, as piloted by Ash England, or Ashley England as he's known in full, our silver class driver for UKSimRacing, who today made it a perfect performance with back-to-back wins, and indeed competing not just for prizes in the silver class, but also trying to take the scalps of many a gold class driver with an overall 7th in the sprint and a 5th place in the feature. But as we get ready for him to join us in the interview room, we'll be hearing his thoughts on what's been a very strong night, as in fact we do now have him join us. And as he does join us, Ashley, a fantastic run of races today. Indeed, your first 2 rounds of Season 5, and you could not have asked for a better way to start off your championship campaign, could you?
No, definitely not. It was good fun. I didn't really know what to expect. I had quite a lot of pace, to be honest. I could have probably done a bit better in both races, but as it was my first one, I was being a bit cautious. But yeah, definitely a great start.
Oh, indeed. And the fact that you could have perhaps done a little bit better in your own words there, I think that's going to make some of our silver drivers absolutely quake in their racing boots right now in regards to if that's just a slice of your power, then what's coming in future rounds. But we'll come on to that a bit later. Let's focus on your qualifying firstly. Straight out the box, you were absolutely flying in the qualifying session, and you took pole by a considerable margin in the end of multiple tenths of a second. Did you find everything was hooked up today, or was there a little bit more time out there, do you feel?
I still feel like there was a bit more time out there. On one of my faster laps, I got an off track, so obviously it got deleted. But yeah, straight on track, it felt really good. And they've changed the car physics, I think, so it's slightly different. But yeah, it felt good to me anyway. I haven't done much in the cars, to be honest. But yeah, definitely, I felt good.
Indeed, and with a little bit of time being dropped in qualifying, albeit it was not going to have a factor in your qualifying results in the end, and that feeling in the car really coming alive, we translate over into the sprint race. And well, in the sprint, of course, we saw plenty of drama off the line, with Emiel Koopmans being involved in quite a significant knock with also Marcel Fritsch, and that had a bit of a domino effect through the field. Where were you in all of that? Because you seem to be able to just avoid it all and survive.
Well, as they all started crashing, I went to go to the right, but then the cars went to the right, so I turned left, and I did get caught up in it, but I just managed to sneak by next to the wall. I did hit the wall, and I had a bit of damage on my front left, but I just managed to get through it, luckily. So I had a bit of damage, and I was behind the 2 gold drivers in front of me, and I sort of just stayed with them and settled in where I was.
Oh, indeed. And with that in mind, of course, having to settle on in and with a little bit of damage as well, you're not racing with necessarily the silvers at that point. You're focusing more on the other class. We did see a number of times you sort of took peeks, potential looks up the inside, but then backed out. Were you thinking more of, no, I should just focus on racing in my class and bring home the silver win? I don't need any more drama.
Yeah, exactly. In the main race, I had a couple of looks because I made a mistake early on. Second lap into turn 1, I locked up and lost. Obviously, was from the lead. I went down to P5, and then got going again and ended up back down into P6. And then a couple of the other drivers made mistakes, went off, got back into P5, and I thought about going for 4th and 3rd, but at the end there, we was all pretty close, and I didn't want to make a mistake and end up taking 2 of the drivers out, especially when they're not in my silver class.
Oh, indeed. And then translating it over into the feature race, of course, we saw with your finishing position, you started on the front row, joined by James Kersop, one of your silver rivals, who had a good run in the sprint for P8. Was the goal always going to be just to focus on getting ahead of Kersop and then just seeing how the golds filtered through? How did you approach that race, given you were on the front row and it was a silver lockout?
Well, like I say, the start was okay. I didn't get the greatest start. It was basically just getting ahead of him, getting into the lead of silver class, and then seeing whereabouts I could get. But like I say, I made the mistake. It was, luckily enough, it was only gold drivers that got by. But yeah, I don't think that any of the drivers got a great start in the feature, so they ended up slipping backwards. But yeah, I managed to keep up there in the top 5, and then ended up finishing 5th.
Well, indeed, and in running in the top 5, with the fact you've got that strong start compared to your peers, we saw time and time again you running around the likes of Joe Newman, Simon Bamber. And particularly in the opening laps, it did seem to get a little bit hectic in the run through the centre S's and also in the midfield of the circuit. I think you're trying to balance sort of letting them go, but at the same time wanting to get stuck in a little bit, as the racer does.
Yeah, definitely. It seemed like into the harder braking zones, I was a lot better, especially through the middle section. It seemed like I was gaining on them quite a lot, but then through the last corner, I wasn't as quick as them, so I couldn't get right onto the back of them. And plus, because they had slipstream as well, they were managing to keep enough gap, so I couldn't go for a move. I thought about it a few times, but yeah, obviously, like I said, I weren't actually racing them in my class, so I did think about it, but yeah, I ended up settling for 5th with about 5 laps to go.
When settling for it, and by no means a low feat, bringing home an overall 5th place when you're running in the silver class. It's been a perfect day, of course, as we mentioned earlier, and looking ahead, of course, you've really set the bar high at Interlagos. How are you feeling for our circuit next time out in France, the Magny-Cours circuit?
Yeah, I've done a few laps around there the other week, and it seemed okay, but then obviously the cars have changed a bit now with the update, so I think I'm going to be having a bit more practice, but yeah, hopefully I'll be as good, or if not close, with a bit more practice. Hopefully I might be even quicker, you never know.
Well, indeed, now that will be a surprise for many if you are a little bit quicker, because you've already been absolutely blazing fast, but still, if you've got the pace, absolutely go for it, I say. And whilst we do have you, and just before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or say thank you to on today's broadcast?
Yeah, everyone in Willesee Motorsport, so sort of got me involved and said that I should do this. Yeah, I really enjoyed my first race, or my first 2 races, should I say? But yeah, I really enjoyed it. So yeah, thanks for them for letting me know about it and getting me involved.
Oh, it's absolutely brilliant to hear that they did get you involved, and we absolutely loved having you join us on the circuit today. And with that, Ashley, what I'd love to say is thank you for joining us in the interview room. It's been an absolute pleasure. Congratulations on the double victories on your debut, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit in a week's time.
Lovely, thank you very much.
All the best.
Cheers.
So hearing there from Ashley England, or Ash England as he's known in short, who had an absolutely brilliant run of performance today with regards to both races, really nailing it on circuit, and there seemed to be nobody stopping him other than him having to hold himself back to an extent with regards to chasing after the gold drivers and focusing on finishing well in the silver class. But indeed, with that in mind, of course, I wonder if it may be the case that as we go into the next couple of rounds, if you feel the pace is on and perhaps there's the potential of an overall podium, you never know, will he perhaps start to get his claws out a little bit and battle with the golds around him? Well, we'll have to wait and see, but indeed setting a marker there, and I think everyone's going to be hard pressed to beat it when we do go to France. But with our first interview complete, we now come on to a surprise second interview of today. You thought there's only one, but we are going to have a second interviewee, and it's going to be none other than Marcel Fritsch, our UKSimRacing esports driver. And as we do get him ready to head into the interview room, and give us a brief moment, ladies and gentlemen, he will be joining us very shortly. And we'll hear from him very shortly. And a driver who, after an absolutely thrilling run at Alton Park, has had a very different day today with a race number 1 which ended before it really started. And then, of course, race number 2 was all about the long recovery drive. Well, I'm pleased to say we now have him joining us. Marcel, a very different day today from Alton Park last time out. At Alton Park, it was all about running up front, having great battles, but today it was a race number 1 to forget and a race number 2 where you had to push hard and fight your way on through. How was your thoughts on today's racing?
Hello from Austria. What a day today. I think I need all my luck the last evening, and today nothing was left.
Oh, indeed. It did seem as though you couldn't find any luck today with regards to the way the racing went, but still, you managed to find some fortune in the second race a day. But let's dial it all the way back first to qualifying. It did look as though in the qualifying session, you found quite a bit of pace out on circuit, but everybody seemed to be very close in terms of those lap times in the gold class.
Yes, it is very close, and they did an update to the car, which I learned today. And I could not have the time to get my head around the car, and so I'm very pleased with the first place. It's very good for me.
Indeed, and in finding that time, of course, in qualifying and to score well there on the grid, we then translated it, of course, into the race itself. And, well, what a very different way to start the race. There was a bit of a coming together between yourself and Emiel Koopmans, which you two aren't shy of making contact with one another, but this time the contact was a little bit too close for comfort.
Yes, I talked to him, and I hold my line, and he didn't see me. He did think I'm far behind him, and he crossed the line and hit me. But these things happen. We all do something sometimes, and no problem. We talked about it.
Oh, indeed, and we did see off camera there with regards to the Discord that Emiel owning up to what happened in race number one. Now, with race number one really being a blowout there, and knowing you'd had to start from the back of the grid in race number two, and just as we're looking for at the race footage in the background here, race number two started from a bit of a different place on the grid for yourself. It started from the pit lane.
Yes, it was not my day today. I was busy writing in the Discord and nearly missed the start. And then in panic, I come to the grid only to realize that I had the setup for the short race with not enough fuel. So I have to go out and start from the box with the right setup. But then it was a very joyful race with my special friend. I did not attack him, so we can have a good pace and make some time good for the others. And in the last round, he gave me his place as a kind of make good for the first race.
Oh, indeed. And coming from the back of the field, of course, unexpectedly, how did you approach making your way past the Silvers? Because they're all battling for position quite hard, and then you're trying to fit your way through.
Yeah, surprisingly, it was relatively clean and easy. They all they did not fight too hard because it's not very, how should I say, it's better for them also to let us go because they lose time when they fight with a faster car. But in the 12, 11, 10s, these guys also surely fight for their places.
Oh, indeed, and we did see a number of our silver drivers as you got towards where the silver podium drivers are. We saw them start to dig in and battle for overall position. But then once you'd passed them, you caught up to the back of Emiel Koopmans, who in turn was battling with Samuel Sprout and also what was there, I believe, Lee Holmes and Nathan Foster, and having to come into a fight against drivers who are very fast. They're already trying to go defensive. Well, of course, we know Koopmans very well, but also having to get stuck in with the others. Just take us through that dynamic, a five-way fight effectively for P6.
Yes, it is. All the race I try to save the tires as always and have a little gap to him, so we are both quicker. And at the end of the race, I tried to narrow this gap, which I could. And then it would be very interesting. He let me through someone that's the braking not right. And I was on pace 7, P7, and could have taken P6 if I don't make a silly mistake. But P7 is okay.
Oh, indeed. And to be fair, being our championship leader going into tonight, we're not quite sure how the standings will shake up. I think you're still going to be right up the top. It's a good recovery from yourself in the feature to finish P6 in class, P7 overall. And now taking it forward to France in a week's time, we head to the Magny-Cours circuit, recently introduced to iRacing. How are you feeling for the fast but highly technical French track?
Oh, this will be a really challenge for me. I don't have the track now, and I have to go. I have to work all the day, and I come back on Wednesday evening. So I will buy the track on Tuesday and Thursday, and then try to get some laps in. But my performance will be not really good, I think.
Well, it's definitely going to be last minute practice, but to be fair, we've seen how fast you can go in the races with time, so we look forward to seeing how you get on next week. But just before we do let you go, as always, Marcel, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or thank you to on the broadcast this evening?
Yes, as always, I have to thank our sponsors, the best tires in the world, GT and Sachs. And I want to thank you for your brilliant stream and for the joy you gave me the next day on breakfast when I watch it.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Marcel, and it's our pleasure to have you on the grid and joining me in the interview room. But with that, thank you for joining me once again, and congratulations on the great recovery drive in the round number 4 race, and still keeping smiling and keeping your spirits up despite everything in race number 3 today.
Okay, cheers, thank you, bye.
All the best. So hearing there from our goal driver of Marcel Fritsch, championship leader going into this round. I think he may have dropped off of the championship lead to a degree after this round, but still you can hear the positivity there from him with regards to his run in the second race of the day, the round number 4 race, where in the feature just got his head down despite having to start from the pit lane as well, almost missing the start of the race as we heard there due to a little bit of a complication on the setup, but in the end got himself underway, picked his way past the silvers and also the gold drivers who had a difficult race, and then ended up getting stuck in behind his old friend and rival Emiel Koopmans, and the Apex Mrs. driver in the end not quite able to keep the WS Racing Esports Austrian at bay to the finish. And as we heard there directly from Marcel himself, could have potentially taken the place from Samuel Sproul for P6 overall, P5 in class in the end, but it wasn't to be due to a mistake right at the end. But still, Fritsch definitely one of the big names in the gold class, and he'll be looking to have a good run at Magny-Cours if he can get the track hooked up in the limited practice time he'll have available. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, you have heard from our 2 interviewees from today, and that firstly was Ash England, the silver class driver in the 34 car for Willesee Racing, your double silver winner of the day. And also you've just heard from Marcel Fritsch, the number 7 gold class driver from the WS Racing Esports outfit, and of course finishing P11 in class in the sprint and P6 in the class in the feature. But 2 great performances from 2 great drivers, and we look forward to seeing how they get on in a week's time. But with that, it is now time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have enjoyed the show today and you want to know more about the UK sim racing community, then why not check out our official website. That's UKSimRacing.co.uk. You saw it flash up earlier in today's broadcast. Alternatively, if you don't want to go to our website but you're a bit more Twitter inclined, you can always go to our official Twitter. That is twitter.com/UKSimRacing_. Also, a big thank you to our affiliates. We mentioned them earlier, and let's go through them again. Swallow Meadow Sim Racing Coaching, their YouTube address available there. And why should you listen to Swallow Meadow, I hear you ask? Well, for the simple reason, Swallow Meadow is one of the utmost best sim racing coaches out there. Whether you're looking to gain a whole 10th, a whole second, or looking to improve your driving style for sprint, feature races, or anything in between, the thing about Swallow Meadow's sim racing coaching technique is that many coaches will tell you all the things that you need to improve on at once. Meanwhile, Swallow will focus on the 3 key things that matter most in terms of getting the most out of what you're looking to improve, and then will add more and more to the coaching experience as time progresses. The idea being that you learn small things, and therefore as you take those small things into consideration, you'll improve considerably. And also being an official iRacing esports champion in multiple iRacing series, including the Porsche Cup in 2021. That's why Swallow Meadow is the voice of reason when it comes to sim racing coaching. We also have their Race Anywhere, their web address raceanywhere.co.uk, and Race Anywhere is the provider of curated sim racing equipment aiming to only stock products that represent excellent value for the sim racing community. We also have Demon Tweaks, their web address demon-tweaks.com. The provider of the most complete and innovative motorsport product range available worldwide. So no matter what your level or discipline, Demon Tweaks could help drive you to realise your motorsport ambitions. And indeed, whether those be in the simulated world or the real world, Demon Tweaks has got a little something for everything. And then last but not least, Amazon. Their web address, amazon.co.uk. They are the company striving to be the Earth's most customer-centric company, the Earth's best employer, and the Earth's safest place to work through the provision of concepts pioneered by Amazon, which include but are not limited to one-click shopping, Amazon Prime, and Amazon Web Services. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, we now get ready to make our way from Brazil back to continental Europe to the French circuit of Magny-Cours in a week's time for rounds 5 and 6 on Thursday the 19th of January 2023. Alton Park was a circuit in the British countryside which was all about elevation change and boldness under braking and the ability to carry speed. At Interlagos, it was all about a test of stamina and the willingness to endure the trials and tribulations of the Brazilian circuit. And in France, it is going to be the finicky circuit that continues to ask the question, how well can you balance the car under braking into the hairpins, and how smooth can you fly through the chicanes and also the sweeping corners? Well, that is the question we're going to be asking and getting the answer to in rounds 5 and 6. But until then, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. We have been UK Sim Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain of Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And until next time, remember to stay well, stay safe, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.